Welcome to the Slow Living Collective podcast. I'm Amy, wife, mother of two and devoted homemaker. Join me on this journey as we explore the beauty of slow and simple living, where life unfolds at its own unhurried pace. I'll take you through my experiences of slowing down, tending to our allotment plot, finding joy in the little things and making the most of our small home. Together we'll learn to live in harmony with the ever-changing seasons, discovering the magic that lies in embracing the present moment. So let's embark on this enriching adventure towards a more intentional and fulfilling life. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Slow Living Collective podcast. I'm Amy and I'm so excited to have you here for today's episode. Today I'm going to talk to you guys about something that I don't think I've spoken about before on the podcast. So, I talk about all things slow, simple and seasonal living. Like, that is my thing. Alongside lots of other things like small home living and gardening and urban homesteading, organic allotmenting, all sorts of things. But I want to talk about falling off the wagon when it comes to slow and simple living, because it is really simple to do. It is really simple to just fall out of alignment, because we live in this world that is so often feeling so fast paced and overwhelming. And I think if you're listening to this, then you probably feel the allure of slow, simple and seasonal living. Like, it's just the opposite of what society teaches us that we want. And I guess it's kind of a lifestyle that invites us to appreciate more of the little things, to slow down, to live more in harmony with nature's rhythms. And we can do things like embracing minimalism, mindfulness, have more of a connection to the earth. We can slow down our lives, we can simplify what we do and what we have, and just find greater peace, purpose and fulfillment as well. But sometimes maintaining any kind of lifestyle isn't always a smooth journey. Listen, life happens, stress builds up, temptations arise. It's so easy to feel overwhelmed and to just find ourselves just drifting away from what our intentions are. Now, back when I first started this podcast, I would often use this phrasing, which I tend not to use so much these days, but it is absolutely 100% how I still feel. And that is that so often society teaches us to live a life of default rather than a life of intention. And I truly believe that living slowly and simply and more in tune with the seasons is a life that we choose to live. And it's funny because that is the natural way of living, but we've been so torn away from that it's almost like it's this sort of like fad. And it's so ironic to me because, our ancestors lived in tune with the seasons and lived a slow and simple and seasonally connected life. And yet for us now, we've been so pulled away from it that it seems like it's just like this thing that we have to try and adhere to. When, if you caught my episode last week, I was pretty much talking about how it's just a natural way of being. Living seasonally is just a natural way of being, and whether we follow it ourselves or even if we don't, our bodies, our minds, our being is naturally ebb and flowing with the seasons. And that's why I really think seasonal living is the crux of it all, because whether we like it or not and whether we want to follow it or not, we are naturally feeling the feelings. We are naturally feeling the ebbs and flows that exist just by living. So just to recap on that a little bit, I guess when you think about how the seasons ebb and flow, and so we're currently in summer, but soon we're going to be like slowing down into autumn and then into winter. We will naturally do that. We will naturally feel that. We will naturally feel more tired and want to turn more inward. That naturally will happen whether we follow it or not. And so all seasonal living is just really acknowledging that and really acknowledging the ways in which is just natural for us to live and how we can go ahead and continue to do that. But it can sometimes, life can just, because life can be so busy, life can be so full on, like I said in a previous episode last week, that the modern world wants us to live like it's an eternal summer, and it is not an eternal summer. And the best thing we can do for ourselves, for our bodies, for our minds, for our being, is to just honor that. And so it can be very easy to drift away from those intentions. Now, maybe you've found yourself reaching for convenience over conscious choices when maybe it comes to food. That is a really common one. Or maybe you're feeling suddenly pulled in too many directions. And I just want to tell you that you're not alone. It is completely normal in almost every facet of life to experience a setback. And whether you have fallen off the wagon with So and Simple living, or you're just feeling like you're not in a place that you were, today we're going to talk about why this happens and how you can get back on track as well.
Are you looking for a delicious way to live a more sustainable and mindful life? Look no further, because I've got something special just for you. Introducing Riverford Organic, your gateway to fresh organic fruit and vegetable boxes delivered right to your doorstep. When you choose Riverford, you're not just eating organic, you're supporting an ethical business that believes in food that's good for the planet and your well-being. Eating organic means you're savouring food grown with care, free from harmful chemicals and absolutely bursting with flavour. By choosing Riverford, you're supporting a business that is committed to sustainability, is employee-owned and passionate about reducing food waste. Embrace the seasons with a rotating variety of fruit and vegetables, fresh, local and in harmony with nature. Riverford has been a game changer for our family, and I think it could be for yours too. There is nothing more exciting for me than grabbing my Riverford box off my doorstep on delivery day. But there's more. As a treat for you guys, you can enjoy a £15 credit towards your second order. Simply sign up at theslowlivingcollective.com/Riverford to claim your credit and start your journey towards healthier, ethical and more seasonal eating.
Okay, so why do we fall off the wagon in situations like this? And I want to say that often it just comes down to the pressures of modern living. It's so easy to get burnt out and stressed and have all these external expectations that really do quickly derail our best intentions, because although living seasonally and slowly and simply is the most natural thing there is, we are constantly going to be butting heads against the modern world, and those things don't subside. As I've always said, it's not about saying like, hey ho, I'm off to live like my ancestors, see you later. Instead, it is about more than that. And I think the most important thing to think of is that we've got slow, simple and seasonal living on the one hand, but the world still continues. There are still stressors, there are still things going on. It is about just being intentional where we are able. It doesn't have to be this full-on all-out thing. It is about being intentional where we're able to. For example, like, we have to have jobs and we have to pay our bills, we have to pay mortgages and rent, and those things aren't going to change, and they can continue to be stressors. Children still have to go to school, college, university, extracurricular activities and everything else. It is just going to be constant busyness from the modern world, and it is about just trying to slow down within our own sphere as much as we are able to, because despite our best intentions, things are going to come up. So, maybe you have found yourself prioritizing your productivity over pleasure. Maybe you're thinking that you need to be productive all the time and you are not taking enough time for yourself. Or on the same note, maybe you're neglecting your self-care in favor of doing endless to-do lists. I know that's something that I can definitely hold my hands up to. So these are some common signs that you just maybe might be slipping away from some of your slow living goals. So just take a moment and think about the life that you want to create and how you want it to look, and whether everything is currently in alignment with that. But it is really important to remember that these things are normal, and they don't define your worth, and you haven't failed. It's just a blip in the road. It happens. Sometimes things just pile up, and it's just about thinking it through, being intentional, and figuring out how you can get back to that place that you wanted to be. So don't beat yourself up. Practice some self-compassion. It honestly is so easy to fall into a cycle and to, get burnt out and stressed, and things just start compounding on themselves, and also we have this tendency to blame ourselves as well, but this will just hinder you. So just remember that everyone has setbacks. No matter what they're doing, everybody has setbacks. And I think the real key thing is to just acknowledge how you feel. Just try and learn from it a little bit, and just try and move forward with some kindness to yourself as well. And I think it's really important to remember, like I said, that this will constantly happen. It is not always going to be smooth sailing. It is not always going to be that you are able to just completely switch to this slower and simpler way of living. As idyllic as it would be, it's just not possible. That, like I said, the modern world is still going to continue to turn. There are still going to be things that are going to stress us out, that are going to cause us to burn out. Things are going to make us feel more stressed. We're going to be more busy. And this can happen through the seasons as well. Now, if you haven't checked out last week's episode, I know I keep referring to it, but I did do a bit of a dive into seasonal living. And one of the things that came up in that episode was that we just kind of live like it's an eternal summer, and we're expected to live like it's an eternal summer. And by that I mean summer is a time where we naturally feel very active. We're getting more daylight, there is a lot more sunlight on our heads and in our eyes. We are feeling more active, more vibrant, and we tend to schedule more activities, and we don't tire so easily as we would if we were maintaining that schedule in the winter. So, we might be a lot more social, we'll see more people, and while these things are still tiring for us, not as tiring as they might be, say, in other seasons such as autumn and winter, because it's completely normal that by the time autumn, late autumn and into winter comes, that we do turn more inward, that we feel more solitary, that we are more tired, that we don't want to overschedule ourselves, that we're not feeling as social as we maybe did in June, July and August. And it's just acknowledging that, and acknowledging the fact that we do feel different at different times of year. And there's a reason for that. Through the winter, the darker months, we don't get as much sunlight, particularly here in the UK. We're not getting as much sunlight. We're not getting as much daylight. The days can be very short, as you move towards winter solstice. And, we are just more tired, and we just turn more inward, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just natural. And so we couldn't handle a summer schedule in the winter. And so it's really important to remember that these things are constantly going on, and seasonal living is constantly occurring as well. And it's always going to be this push and pull, and it's about just figuring out what works for you, what feels right, what feels in alignment with you, and how you can just sort of mesh the two together. Even as I'm sitting here recording this episode, I always record the episodes in our bedroom, and I'm looking out the window. I'm very lucky where I live. I live in a lot of nature, and I'm looking out the window and I can see the tree that's right by my house, and I can see the acorns, and they're green at the moment, but it's like a sure sign to me that summer is coming to an end and soon autumn will be here. And those signs are everywhere. As time goes on, I don't want to rush the end of summer. We haven't had the best summer weather-wise. I'm keen not to rush the end of it. And it's also an interesting time of year as well, isn't it? Because I see all the time people, the children are going to be getting ready to go back to school soon. And as soon as school restarts, it's autumn in most people's minds, and it's like autumn doesn't begin until autumn equinox, which is around the third week of September. And we've still got a lot of summer left, and we home educate, so for us that doesn't necessarily feel the same way. I certainly wouldn't start embracing autumn until autumn equinox, but the signs that summer will start to begin to slow down are everywhere, just like the acorn sitting on my tree. The season always changes, time always moves on. The next cycle of the year will always continue, and if you're feeling particularly burnt out or stressed, or that you're not currently living in alignment with the seasons or simplicity or slow living, that season will end too. It's a period of time that sometimes we just can't avoid. We can't avoid it, and the best thing to do is just try and bring ourselves back in alignment and just do the things that really do just help calm our nervous systems. So if you're feeling like maybe you have just got out of alignment with yourself, I want you to know this, that rebuilding your slow living routine does not have to be overwhelming, because you've already done it. And if you're listening to this episode and you're like, hang on a second, Amy, I'm new to this, I haven't done it before, I want you to just think about whether you're new to this or you're just coming around to getting back on track, that it starts small, and the smallest of steps can lead to really big changes. Now, when it comes to slow living, a question I get asked quite a lot is like, well, how did you come to the idea of slow living? Like, were you burnt out? What made you suddenly go, I'm not into the way I'm living? And I've thought really, really long and hard about this, particularly because I love sharing over on Instagram. That has always been my place of choice. And something else that I really do share about a lot, and you've probably seen it here on my podcast. Also, if you're subscribed to my Substack, you might have seen it in the form of a blog post. I will talk quite a lot about my time in multi-level marketing and how it was I really do think that it was almost like the key indicator that made me switch the way I live. And I don't think it was necessarily that obvious at first, and I tell you for why, because I have been thinking for a while, and I've shared about my time in multi-level marketing a lot over the last 5 years, because it's been 5 years since I left multi-level marketing, and I have had periods where I've shared a lot about the reasons I think multi-level marketing is not great, and that's very much underplaying how I feel about it. But I've shared a lot about that, and I've had periods where I've shared like it quite intensely, and then I don't share it for a while, and then I come back and I'll share it a little more intensely again. And I've always felt like I don't really know how this all fits together. Like, I want to share about these things because I'm very passionate about the fact that multi-level marketing is not the answer. 99.6% of people, I think it is, never make a penny or actually lose money from multi-level marketing. It is not what is promised. It is toxic, and I've done lots of stuff on this, so you can definitely go and find some other episodes. Come follow me on Instagram. I'm there at the Slow Living Collective, or go check out my Substack, which is also theslowlivingcollective.substack.com. And I share a lot about that, and I really do think, and this is a recent revelation, that that's where it all started, because multi-level marketing is this toxic culture of productivity, of personal development, and I mean, there's so many red flags in multi-level marketing. I could honestly be here all day, but it is this just work, but it's advertised as like a residual. It's like you are gonna just get paid for doing nothing. And people in multi-level marketing will tell you like, oh yeah, that's not what we say. You have to do the work. It's a lot of mixed messaging in multi-level marketing, but go check out my other stuff about that, rather than me boring you with it here. But I do think that's where it began for me, because slow and simple living and seasonal living, it's just the opposite of what multi-level marketing is. Multi-level marketing encourages hustle culture and work and capitalism and money. And listen, I'm the first person, I will not lie to you and say that I'm not money motivated, because money motivates me a lot, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. There's a lot of issues with multi-level marketing, but it is where I think leaving, and then sort of once I left, stumbling upon like anti-MLM content and being like, oh my god yes, oh my god yes, oh my god yes, and just really opened my eyes to what I'd been a part of. And I think that's where it started, but then also shortly after that the pandemic started, so we got that sort of snapshot of life that was a lot more slow and simple. And I know I've said this before, but I remember at certain points of the pandemic where they're like, right, we're going to get back to normal, and I was thinking like, I don't want that. Like, I want to leave my house, of course, and I want to be able to stand within like 2 meters of somebody, and I want to hug my friends and family, but I don't want to go back to the fast-paced life. And I've been very lucky, we've been very lucky that we haven't had to. And I know it's not everyone's reality. And so, you know, we are, like, I work doing this podcast, doing my newsletter, you know, I have my seasonal living course, and I have like a few other bits and bobs that I do, but I work for myself, and so I'm very lucky to do that. But my main job, my main priority is raising my children. So on the flip side of that, my husband is, I would say, the sole provider to our family. And, you know, I'm very lucky that I am able to sort of raise a business from the ground up, but I never have the time that I want to put towards that, because like I'm busy being a mum, and I don't begrudge that for a second. But I definitely do try and find, you know, I'm trying to find little gaps all the time where I can get stuff done. And it's where I find it difficult is in the sense that I have been creative and been a writer my entire adult life. You know, before I had children, my job was a copywriter. That is what I did. And so I've worked for myself doing that. It's something that I didn't particularly want to go back to. And, you know, so I've always had a little bit of freedom, I guess. But like anybody that's creative will understand what I'm about to say. Like, when creativity strikes, like, go with it, right? That's not always that easy when you have other priorities. So I definitely feel like the push and the pull as well. But if you feel like maybe you are just, you know, drifting and you don't know how to get yourself back on track, or you don't know how to get on track in the first place, then just figure out one area of your life where you'd like to focus your attention. Because I think that's honestly where it started for me, you know, coming out of the pandemic, and I was like, no, I don't want to go back to that. And, you know, we've got the benefit of, you know, my husband, he has a quote unquote normal job, and he is lucky that he works from home. So we do have a lot more freedom, you know, because he has no commute at either end of the day, so we can do things a little slower, but that's not everyone's reality, but there are ways that you can sort of start implementing some of these things either into your life or back into your life. And like I say, just identify one area where you'd like to focus your attention, because that's where, for most people, where it starts. It's a rabbit hole, and you'll end up doing more and more and more, but it is, you know, is it just finding ways to slow down? Is it focusing on more seasonal nutrition? Do you need to sleep more? Are you burnt out because you're spending too much time on digital devices and you need to detox? Just figure out what is manageable and then just build from there. And I really recommend mindfulness and self-care practices because they can be so beneficial. And I know so often people say, like, I can't meditate, like my mind is too busy. Guys, that's the point. That's the point. The fact that you have got to that point of recognition means that you're doing it, because all of our minds wander all of the time. And the fact that you are aware that you think you can't do it because you think, oh, my mind is wandering, I can't meditate. All of our minds wander, and the most important thing you can do when it comes to mindfulness and meditation is to be able to acknowledge that. So the fact that most people say, oh, I can't meditate or I can't do mindfulness because my mind wanders too much, it's like, you're almost there, you're so close. Because what you need to do is acknowledge, oh, hold on a second, I'm thinking about what I need from Morrison's, and just bring your mind back. And it happens all the time. Some days you will be absolutely amazing at it, and other days you will be like, my mind is all over the place and I can't silence it. There are the good and more difficult things in anything, but I really, really do recommend it. I'm a yoga and meditation teacher, and do you know what? I can't always keep my mind quiet. In fact, more often than not, I can't keep my mind quiet. So just know that you are not alone. It's not that you can't do it. All you need to do is, in that moment when you realise that your mind has wandered, is bring your mind back to the present and keep going. And if you have to do that 10 times, 20 times, 40 times, 100 times during your meditation, so be it. So be it, because you will find as time moves on that some days you're like, I was actually completely relaxed there, and other times you will think, no, it wasn't happening for me today. And it happens to me, and I'm qualified, so take with that what you will. But you know, speaking about yoga as well, yoga or any kind of like mindful movement, I found as a yoga teacher, people tend to be very scared of yoga. And I think we have this kind of assumption from the media that to be able to do yoga, you need to bend yourself into a specific location and be standing on a cliff's edge in tree pose with beautiful scenery behind you. And listen, that might be fine for the Instagram yoga influencers, but for the rest of us, that's not really what it looks like. People all over the place are taking some time to do some yoga in their bedroom. I do my yoga at the bottom of the bed, not on the bed, at the bottom on the floor. I just roll out my mat and do my yoga there. And so often when I've been talking to people, like teaching, people will say, oh, I don't know about the yoga bit because I'm not very good at yoga. And it's like, yoga isn't something to be good at. It's about being with yourself and the things that you learn and understand and come to your mind while you're in the pose. The pose never ever has to be perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect pose. And so a little bit of yoga or mindful movement can really, really help as well. No one's watching you. No one can see. And so if you feel like, oh, I'm not doing it right, you know, you're doing fine. You are absolutely doing fine. And the limitation is your mind saying, I can't do yoga. No one's looking to be the next yoga Instagram influencer. I know I'm not, and I'm guessing that you're probably not either. So just take some time and do that. You know, do a downward dog, do child's pose, do some corpse pose, and just try and, you know, lay still and just try and quiet your mind as much as you can. And when it wanders, just bring it back. Turn on some music. You can find lots of like mindfulness music on places like YouTube for free, if you don't mind an advert interrupting you every now and again. You can also find things on Spotify. That's where I would listen to stuff. If you want to, you can download the Calm app. There's free and paid options on there. And so, there are lots of different things that you can try. Because these sorts of things, as well as things like gratitude, are really powerful tools for helping you shift your mindset. Because when you speak kindly to yourself and focus on what you're thankful for, you do ultimately cultivate a bit more of a positive outlook. And I am definitely not saying that you can't have other emotions. That's a very toxic way of being and thinking. It's just about, when you want to and when you are able to just try and cultivate more of a positive outlook where you can. It's absolutely important that you don't deny any of your feelings or shove them away. It's important to feel all of them. But some of these practices can just help you get back on track. And there are other ways that you can do that. Maybe start to declutter your space if it's got a bit more overwhelming. Prioritize your time, techniques. Try and create more of a balance in your life as well. So I suppose, talking about balance, we want to talk about how we can continue on without falling off the wagon again. And I think the most important thing to think of is that you will fall off the wagon again. Life will happen, and it always does, and it keeps coming, and there's no way to escape it. I think focus on just setting yourself some realistic goals in your mind. What do you want your life to look like, from a slow living concept, simplicity, seasonal living? How can you create the life that you want to live? And just remember that it's about progress. It's never about perfection. And so I think as well, you just need to be flexible and adaptable just to be able to sustain a slow living practice, because life is constantly changing, and you and your routines will evolve with it, and they need to evolve with it. So rather than thinking about like, oh, I've fallen off the wagon, I've gone back to like hustling, everything feels fast paced again, I'm getting overwhelmed, instead of thinking of it as a setback, just think about it as, how can I grow? How can I get back to where I was? How can I figure out what matters most for us in our life? But most importantly of all, find joy in the whole process, because slow living isn't a fad. Seasonal living is not like something that's is trendy for a while. These are ways that we naturally live, that we naturally want to live. So just enjoy it, and remember that, if you fall off the wagon, it's not a final point. You can always bring yourself back. Life will always happen. You haven't done anything wrong. The whole goal is to create a life that nourishes your body, your mind, and your soul as well. So I want you to remember that it's completely okay to fall off the wagon when it comes to slow, simple, or seasonal living. What matters is just getting back up and continuing on your slow living journey. There are so many things, life getting in the way, common challenges. So just take really small steps, because you can rebuild your routine again. You can find balance again, and celebrate your wins. It doesn't matter how small they seem to you. Just be kind to yourself. And, I would love to connect with you and to help you live that more intentional and more fulfilling life. So don't forget to connect with me either on Substack or on Instagram as well. So before I go, I just want to give you a few practical tips. So whether you're just getting started, or whether you are, maybe like we've discussed in this episode, maybe you feel like you've fallen off the wagon a little bit and you want to sort of get started or restarted with your slow and simple living journey. So maybe declutter a small space. Try a short meditation. Commit to having one unplugged evening per week, because all of these small changes can really make a big difference. And I would love to, if you'd like to, please share them. That like I said, connect with me either on Substack or on Instagram. You can leave me a comment, you can shoot me a DM, leave me a comment on my Substack. So my Substack is where my podcast will always post out. So even though you might be listening to this on something like Apple Podcasts or Spotify or somewhere else, even though you're listening to it there, you can actually head over to my Substack and you would find the original post. And I always pop the show notes with the original post as well. You can leave comments there, so definitely get involved. You never know, your insights will inspire others on their slow living path as well. And just remember that slow living is just a continuous process of discovery and growth, along with simplicity and seasonal living as well. And you know, I'm always here to help support you every single step of the way. So thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I hope it was helpful. I know it can feel a little overwhelming if you feel like things have slipped in your life, whether it be living slowly, living with more simplicity, or you're feeling sort of like out of bonk with the seasons. I know it can feel tough, but these periods are just seasons in your life, and you've done it before. You can absolutely do it again. Just start small, start slow, and you will get back there. You will always get back there. So I would definitely say I would love to connect with you on Instagram and on Substack. Find me on Instagram at The Slow Living Collective. Find me on Substack, theslowlivingcollective.substack.com. Leave me a comment on the show notes for this episode. I would love to know your thoughts, and yeah, you'll get there. I promise. We've all been there. We all drop off things occasionally, but we get back round again. So come over to Substack, join the community there, subscribe, it's free, and I'd love to see you. So thank you so much for listening to today's episode, and I will catch you guys in the next one.